Some of you may know that it is in universal folklore. In Germany, in Finland, in Italy, in Greece, in Czechoslovakia, you'll find versions of this story. But it is in the Jewish oral tradition in the Israel folktale archives from Iraq and from Morocco. And you're going to hear a verse from Psalm 68, verse 20, repeated several times, and we welcome you to say it with us. Blessed be God, day by day. Everybody.
Blessed be God, day by day.
You got it. Okay.
El alto Señor nos dio una ley muy estimada, en Sinai la descendió por ser cosa muy preciada. Tomimos cosa lavada en mano de nuestro Dios, Hodul Adonai ki tov ki leolam chasdo.
The king of Morocco loved justice. And he always wanted to make sure that in his land, that justice was for everybody. That the people were happy and were living a good life. But he also knew that if he went out in his regal robes as king and asked people, they would tell him only what they thought he wanted to hear. And so the king decided to put on a disguise as an old man, and he'd walk into the marketplace listening to what people said and to ask them questions. And when he asked them questions, he listened carefully to their answers. He wanted justice in his kingdom. So one day, in disguise, he was walking down a crooked little street and he came upon a poor cottage. But he began to smell delicious foods coming from that cottage, and also listening to a young man playing a guitar and singing.
אשר באביב שנותיו הכיר יוצרו וירא שם במורותיו את משטרו.
The king knocked on the door, and the young man David answered the door, and the king, in disguise, so that this young man did not know who this man stranger was, said, "Is a guest welcome here?"
Of course. Please, come in. I'm about to start my dinner.
And so the king, as a guest, sat down with David. David recited the blessings over the wine and the bread, and they ate. And after the dinner, David once again began to sing.
Alauna yo nací, a las dos me engrandecí, a las tres tomé amante, y a las cuatro me casé.
And at the end of that song, the king asked him, tell me, David, what do you do for a living? You have such delicious foods at your dinner.
I'm a cobbler. I'm a cobbler by day, and I make enough money. I go to the market and I buy this food, and then I come home to nurture my true passion, which is music.
I can see that, I can hear that. Tell me, David, what would happen if the king forbids you from repairing other people's shoes tomorrow? What would you do then for money?
What would I do? I mean, I don't know, but blessed be God, day by day.
The king continued talking with David and then stood up and bid him farewell and said, may I come again?
Please, my friend, anytime. My door is open to you.
The king returned to the palace, and he decided to test David's faith. And he had a proclamation sent out that you had to have a special license in order to repair shoes. And of course, when David saw that he did not have this license, he didn't know what to do. He had a dilemma.
What am I going to do? Well, maybe I can just draw water from a well and make money that way.
And so he drew water and sold the water, and at the end of the day he went to the marketplace, bought his foods, and returned home. And again the king decided to pay him a visit to see what he would have on his table. And of course, when he was in the room and invited to sit at the dinner, he saw again a feast on the table. After a while they talked, and the king said, "Tell me, what happened today? How did it go with you?"
Well, you know, my friend, I don't know, you must have had a premonition, but in fact, the king issued a proclamation, and no cobbler was allowed to cobble without this proclamation, without this permit. So I decided to draw water from a well and make enough money for my nightly dinner, and you see the feast before you.
And what will happen if tomorrow the king orders that again a special license had to be obtained by water carriers?
My friend, you are such a pessimist. Blessed be God, day by day.
Well, the next day, the king, yes, he had a proclamation sent out that all water carriers had to have a special license. And again, David heard about this and he realized he could not sell water. What was he to do? He decided to chop wood and sell the wood. And when he had enough money, he went to the marketplace, he bought everything he needed for dinner, and again the king paid him a visit. Surprised to see a table filled with delicious foods. So tell me, David, how did it go with you today?
Well, again, the king issued a proclamation, and I didn't have the permit, so I couldn't draw water, but I figured something else out because I've got some Hokhma. I decided to chop wood, and I sold the wood, and just enough for my feast this evening, and came home. And I'm working on this new song. Which is
I'd love to hear it. Yes, please, please.
Yes?
Play it. Yes.
Okay. Tu madre cuando te parió y te quitó al mundo, corazón ella no te dio para amar segundo, corazón ella no te dio para amar segundo.
Thank you, my friend. I hope we'll meet again. And the king returned to the palace. And the next morning, the king had the order sent out that all wood choppers were to report to the palace and to stand as palace guards. And so David reported to the palace. He was given a uniform. Yes. He was given a sword and a scabbard. And he stood guard all day long. And at the end of the day, he went to collect his wages for the day's work. But he was told, oh, palace guards are not paid at the end of the day, but only at the end of the week. So what was David now to do for money, for food, for that day? He had a dilemma.
I figured something out. I think I will pawn the blade of this sword. And at the end of the week, when I get paid, I'll go back and redeem the sword. And since I've become a good wood chopper, I will carve a blade made of wood. Nobody will know the difference. Nobody will see it. It's in the scabbard. That's what I'll do.
And so that night, of course, with the money that he had gotten from pawning that metal blade, he bought the food, and the king paid him a visit, again surprised to see this sumptuous banquet on his table. David, tell me, how did it go with you today?
Well, as you see, once again, God is with me. I had to pawn the blade of my sword in order to buy the food for this evening.
That's very...
The king has been very hard on me lately.
But tell me, David, what will happen if there is sword inspection tomorrow? What will you do then?
Blessed be God, day by day. He has seen me through this far. He will tomorrow.
Well, the next day the king decided to test David's cleverness. And so he ordered that David, the palace guard, was to come to the throne room, that a criminal would be brought in, and all the advisors gathered around the throne. And when David, the palace guard, came into the throne room, of course the king knew who David was. David had absolutely no idea that the king had been his nightly dinner guest. And the king said, "Palace guard, this criminal has been found guilty of a terrible crime. You have been chosen to execute him with your sword right now in front of us all."
Your Majesty, I have never killed anyone in my life. Please, I cannot do such a thing.
And the commander called out, "The king's ordered, you must do it."
Creator of the universe, I have never shed a drop of blood in my life. You know this. I am a good man. Well, if this prisoner be in fact guilty, then let my blade be made of steel. But should he prove to be innocent, let my blade be made of wood.
And suddenly and slowly, David drew out his sword, and it was made of wood. The king laughed a hearty laugh. And of course, the prisoner was released, and the king came down from the throne, embraced David, and revealed that, yes, I have been your dinner guest night after night. And David and the king remained honest friends, and David became the advisor to the king. But David continued saying,
"Blessed be God,
day by day."
את משטרו